Okay, so can I be real with you guys? I really kinda just want to get this one out of the way this year. No, really, I don't have a nice pithy intro for this vid. 2019 was actually a fantastic year for music, and to be fair, a lot of the stuff I have to gripe about this year, well, most of it anyway, a lot of it is just whatever. You know what I mean? Hell, 2019 was so good for music, it almost felt like an apology for the last couple of years. We got a lot of ground to cover with this video, and we got some big stuff happening at the end of this one, so if it's all the same to you... So, you know how some years the worst list has a general theme kind of running through it? You know, like how 2014 was the year of the sociopathic dipshit, how 2017 was the year of what the fuck are you doing here, stuff like that. I actually have one for this year as well, as a lot of the albums I ended up picking for the worst list followed a similar trend of, who is this for? That was a big question I asked myself as I listened to Alice Cooper, Joe Perry, and Johnny Depp lazily warble their way through covers of David Bowie and Jim Carroll. It's not like horrendous, I guess, but who the hell was asking for this? Who? There's a demand for this shit? Look, if Alice Cooper and a bunch of his rich friends want to get drunk and fuck around with some karaoke, I got nothing against that on principle, but people, it doesn't make for fun listening. Fucking 1%. Admit it, you completely forgot this one even came out this year, didn't you? Hell, how many of you didn't realize this came out at all? My god, I am so glad Buck Cherry isn't really a thing anymore, and if they were, then the absolutely negligent reception this album got has firmly killed what little enthusiasm anyone could have had left for them. I'm sure the Biker Mom set probably still gets something out of this, and hey, don't let me piss on the tailpipes of your large ex-husband's overpriced midlife crisis mobile if that's the case, but to those of you who don't sing the lyrics to Crazy Bitch during sex, this was bland, cringeworthy, and it was mixed like absolute dog shit on top of everything else. Oh, and that cover of Head Like a Hole makes me want Trent Reznor to slap the back tattoo off of this guy. Good lord. If you missed this album, be thankful. You know, there's a part of me that almost hates to even put this out here. I mean, you know, this wasn't one of the worst albums of the year. It sure as hell is better than What Happens Next. Though, yeah, if any band these days clearly defines who is this for, it would be this new incarnation of Gang of Four that Andy Gill has been farting around for the past 8 years or so. I'm loath to even call this Gang of Four. Gang of Four were the guys behind Entertainment, Solid Gold, and Songs of the Free. This... like I said in my original Fimmy, this only exists because Andy Gill is too insecure to just go out on a solo tour. Every year he keeps this charade going is another year the wonderful name of Gang of Four gets an unfortunate blemish on it. And pulling all of Gang of Four's good albums off of streaming services is really only pouring salt into the wound, Andy. I'm sorry, I am really salty about that. Entertainment is one of the best goddamn albums of the 70s, and... give me back Entertainment, Andy, because this is the opposite of that. Oof. Just oof. I really hate to put this album on the list. Remo Drive don't seem like bad guys or anything. Hell, I even got the chance to meet them last year. What the fuck was I looking at? But yeah, this record really does not show these guys in a good light. And I hate to even say that because... yeah, this album does serve as a very honest look at a very painful period in their development. The guys had a rough couple of years, and even the process of just getting this album finished, from what I've read, it sounds like it was a bit of a small nightmare for them. Sometimes that kind of tension and misery can produce good music if it's all hewn together correctly, but... no, the meandering melodies, the overly dour lyrics, the overall massive drop in quality and song construction from their last record. Guys, this was just not very good. I don't think this is a death knell for them necessarily. There's still plenty of potential in these guys, and I do sincerely wish them the best, but this was not their best, like, at all. Better luck next time, dudes. Oh, okay, but you want to talk about oof? Oh, this was a legit oof. Especially considering what this band sounds like at their best. Man, hearing shit like this come out of them feels tragic, doesn't it? They've been pivoting really hard into a poppy direction with each successive album they put out, and while that's not an unexpected move or anything, my god, I figured they'd be better at it, but their eagerness to just chase popular trends at the expense of any of their original uniqueness or identity has left them sounding like an absolute husk of themselves. This doesn't sound like the powerful and hopeful band we got to know on albums like Beautiful Letdown and Nothing Is Sound. This sounds like a C-grade hack act trying to knock off Bastille and Imagine Dragons so they can get a featured spot over the credits to a shitty CW series. Like, this is beneath Switchfoot. They should know better than to be making music like this, but Native Tongues exists, so obviously they don't. The Imagine Dragon wasn't nearly as big of a factor this year as it was last, but unfortunately, the beast is still claiming a few victims here and there. And there we go, dishonorable mentions donezo. See, I can be quick when I wanna. Now, on to the list proper, and oh boy. Okay, this first entry, y'all are gonna be mad at me for this one. Hang on. Before you kill me, let me explain. Okay, on their own, these albums were fine, I guess. They certainly weren't amazing, but they each had their highs and lows. They weren't miserable or anything. In a vacuum, there's not too much inherently wrong with either of these records, I suppose, but we don't live in a vacuum, do we? Unless you're watching this video from either the blackness of space or the inside of a dirt devil. These albums aren't necessarily here because of the music. Though, yeah, I will say neither of these live up to Weezer's standards. They're here because of what they represent. Complete, shivering cowardice. Rivers teased us for years, saying he was finally gonna write that dark Weezer album that he always wanted to make. They hyped it up in articles, they released half the fucking record in singles. But after those singles got a mostly reception, instead of building up the better parts of the record and doing their best to keep its memory fresh in our minds and allow the album to have a chance to stand on its own. Hey kids, look over here, I've got a funny meme, so look at the memes and giggle at the memes. Didn't you have another album that you were trying to— Hey, look, I'm a Rivers Crewman, I'm doing a nurse scrub. Rivers Crewman, not supposed to do a nurse scrub. I'm a big city man, I'm a city. I thought this album was supposed to be something you'd been envisioning for years, and it was a big passion. Memes! Teal only exists because the band was scared shitless that Black was gonna bomb, and God, seeing them do such a shady diversional tactic like this, it's so nakedly cynical. Not to mention almost completely unnecessary, because this big diversionary, oh no, look away, our album's so bad, don't pay attention to it, yeah. That whole thing was in service to an album that, I mean, it was fine, you know? You didn't have to do this. It's no Pinkerton, but it sure as hell isn't a Pacific Daydream. Why did you do this? They did not have to chicken shit out like this, but oh my god, they totally did, and people, that just makes me lose so much respect for them. People, remember when Ubate came out and like half the record was them telling us they weren't going to be doing shit like this again? And then here they are, not 5 years later, doing shit like this again. You know, maybe the problem is me. maybe I've taken this band too seriously over the years, you know? Well, don't worry, Weezer. I've learned my lesson. I know now. After a little stunt like this, I promise, from the bottom of my heart, I'll never take you seriously again. Oh, okay, I shouldn't be putting this on the list at all. I mean, come on, nobody expected a Scott Stapp record to be good. Scott Stapp is Scott Stapp, you know, even the things he used to be a part of that we can, through a thick fog of self-denial and rose-tinted nostalgia, call good. They certainly weren't good because of him. He's always been the worst part of any project he's been a part of, but god damn my curiosity. I just had to sit down with this thing and, well, yeah, you get what you pay for, don't you? Man, if you didn't like Scott Stapp's weird warbles back in the Creed days, you are really gonna hate his voice now that he can't even do that anymore. Like Scott, like legit just straight up can't sing anymore. He sounds thin and grating as all hell on this record, and not like in a gruff-hewn, leathery old soul kind of way. More like Grandpa somehow contracted puberty again. If you can imagine that, like, it's weird hearing him sound like this, but it's bad, people. And that's not even mentioning some of the god-awful lyrics on this album. Like with Name, or as I prefer to refer to it, Arms Wide Open 2. I swear I won't fuck it up with this kid, I promise. Which one are you again? I love you, yeah. Scott can't sing, he can't write music, he can't write lyrics, and since Mark Tremonti's various projects are still out there scratching whatever nostalgic itch you might have for the good old days, well, I ask, who is this for? I mean, outside of Stapp's creditors. Crash, how could you? They're just a meme band. You're not supposed to take it seriously. You always take joke bands way too seriously. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Then why aren't I laughing? People, I am sorry, but this band is 99% gimmick, 0.5% band, and 0.5% white wine spritzer. And you know what? I'll even go out on a limb here and admit that this isn't the worst gimmick you could possibly have. No, honestly, I mean that. God knows we've seen worse and weirder gimmicks out there in the metal world, and a goofy as hell band based around a silly comedic concept. That can totally work if you do it right, if you build your concept around something and flesh it out appropriately, or at least in some interesting kind of manner. But these guys, basically they came up with the name, they bought the sweaters, and that's it. Seriously, there is fertile ground for them to do something with this gimmick, but all they did was just scream random unconnected Simpsons references at you and jump around belligerently. I mean, fuck, I do the same thing when I'm at parties. I've never gotten a record deal. Given how big of a mark I am for The Simpsons, something like this should have been an easy slam dunk for me, but given how shriekingly uncreative and boring it is, it just reeks more of lost potential than anything. I mean, these guys got themselves on an episode of The Simpsons, you know? They've reached the apex of their career. Where else can they go but down after this? Look, I'm sorry, I probably sound like the biggest grump in the world, bitching about Oakley Dokley of all things, but this is not a good band. They can't play very well, their gimmick is underdeveloped and boring. This Flanders project really needs to go the way of Maud. Somebody hand me a t-shirt cannon. Hey, so remember a few entries back where I said the Imagine Dragon wasn't really a thing in 2019 and most rock bands finally had enough sense knocked into them to avoid trying to go all electropop and cashing in on a cheap trend? Well, guess who didn't get the memo? And this album wasn't like a gradual shift into things. This wasn't like a direction that Roach had been moving in subtly for, several years. No, Papa Roach just woke up one day and they fucked hard into this. And man, why? The wubby ass bass, the lazy, woozy vocal deliveries, the neutered guitars, and the completely lifeless synth work strewn all over this record. The Imagine Dragon chewed these guys up, spit them out, and then chewed them back up again. Like, this is a bad example of the Imagine Dragon tearing into something. Like, this would have been bad in 2018, man, let alone now. Oh, the band is almost completely unrecognizable on this record. And even though I'm not the biggest Papa Roach fan out there, I can't imagine even a lot of the diehard set were eager to hear something like this. Again, who was this for?
Hey, you know that edgy and loud band that brought us throwdowns like Last Resort, Getting Away with Murder, and To Be Loved? Yeah, I love them. But you know who I wish they sounded like? Ex-Ambassadors. I mean, I love Papa Roach, but if only they could be Papa One Republic, you know what I mean?
That guy does not exist. If you're going to tell me you're that guy in the comments, you are lying, and God will judge you for it. This thing came out in January, was quickly forgotten, and it's basically just one of the last gasps of the Imagine Dragon before it thankfully, hopefully dies out for good on us. Again, a big note to any of you bands out there, if you just feel like you have no choice but to chase trends, do everyone a favor and please don't chase the ones that suck. Also, pro tip, don't name your album after the tagline for The Room. That's a big no. Okay, yeah, I'm officially done with this band. I am just full-blown done. Don't get me wrong, there was certainly a time where I would have spoken up for these guys. Hell, I can still jam out to records like Collide and Comatose, if only in that super geeky, I went to Christian school so my gag reflexes to shit like this were surgically removed kind of way, but I'd say ever since Rise, this band has been going through a gradual, slow, and painful process of becoming the most generic, most boilerplate, and most insipid band in radio rock today. And fair play, this band was already really dumb at the best of times, so that's saying something. And by this record, God, their whole sound is just so watered down, Jesus could turn this album into wine. I feel like if you fed a bot a collection of old Jock Jam CDs, a bunch of old Tony Robbins quotes, and a pile of vaguely Christian-sounding euphemisms, that bot could practically make this album itself without any human interaction. It's not a record that was written so much as word generated, and seeing a band that I know doesn't have to do shit like this makes it all the more heartbreaking, you know? God, again, maybe it's me who's changed. I haven't been a Christian kid for a very long time now, and I do have to admit, going back to some of those old records I used to listen to gets harder and harder to stomach with each passing year. But Skillet used to be an exception to that rule. There was something unique about them, a sense of creativity, a unique approach to songwriting. Hell, maybe it was all just Lori Peters drumming. God, do I miss her. But these days, it's almost impossible to tell Skillet from any other cookie-cutter, bland-ass, meaningless radio rock band that your local radio station will hammer into the ground until you're absolutely sick of it. And you know what the worst part of that is? These guys are fully aware of it. They have to be. It genuinely sounds like all the passion is gone from this band. They are basically a band on retirement mode at this stage. They made their good records, they made their money, now they can just basically dick around and fart out any old thing every 3 to 5 years, no matter how creatively bankrupt and absolutely devoid of substance, and just watch the money and Dove Awards come rolling in. Skillet is hardly even a band anymore. It's a 401k that gets chart success. Well, no surprises here, right? Good God. What did I say about Attila way back in the day when I first had to put them on a worst list?
You know what's almost worse than just being shitty? Wasted potential.
Yeah, no, fuck that. I am reneging on that statement hard. These guys never had potential. Their style is played out. Franz's lyrics are puerile and predictable. And you know what the worst crime about all their music really is at the end of the day? It's just so boring. Like, legit. Probably the biggest reason this album isn't higher on my list is because this whole Attila enterprise has just gotten so damn predictable. I am so glad this style of metalcore is well past over. Thank God no one is really listening to this stuff anymore. I mean, did any of you even realize Attila released a record this year? Hell, I almost missed out on this one. More's the pity. But even after I cringed my way through all the disgustingly materialistic, chest-pounding, tough guy, "Are you triggered?" lyrics and samey, redundant ass throwdowns, the only reason I remember this record now is literally just because, oh yeah, I do worst of the year lists every year. God, I need stuff for this list. It's been a good year. I don't actually have a lot to throw on here, so, okay, yeah, Attila sucked. I can put Attila on the list, who cares? Here's your participation award in the Shithead Olympics. You're not even shitty enough to merit a bronze medal in being awful anymore. Hope it feels good. Same boring shit, same boring asshole, different boring day.
That's boring. You're boring, everybody. Quit boring everyone!
Every other lyric is about how Franzi drives Lamborghinis and makes all the money in the world and is currently fucking your girlfriend right now. And aren't you just so jealous of how cool I am? Be jealous of me, you have to be jealous of me. Man, Attila, they've been at this for so long, but they've never realized the simplest trick in the book, that you can't be offensive all the time. Shock is an emotion that has diminishing returns. Slap me with your dick once, okay, yeah, I'm upset. Do it 15 times in a row and they just politely ask you to leave this Wendy's, sir. This record feels like it was made to make people jealous, but it's had quite the opposite effect on me. Chris, I'm glad I don't have to be you every day, especially since these days you look like every shady motherfucker in a dive bar that's tried to sell me homemade vape juice. You're not a villain, Chris. You're a sad old man. You're a sad old man and you're only 30? Like, think of how sad that is, dude. You're younger than me, but you're a sad old man. Dude, do yourself a favor. Please grow up. Okay, Fat Mike, seriously, please, just please stop. Dude, can you stop? The last NoFX record was so good, but over the past couple of years, you've gone out of your way to do everything in your power to erase the positive effect that record has in our memories. And this thing really doesn't help. Again, this record fits perfectly into the overall theme for this list, as I can't imagine who the fucking hell this record was for. It's a warbling, barely performed, almost unlistenable record about a suicidal hobo clown who's addicted to drugs, alcohol, failure, and singing like someone who's trying angrily to fall asleep, but the damn Ambien just won't kick in. I am trying. I am trying. I am trying. Yeah, this is what everyone wanted to see Fat Mike do. Clearly, this was the last genius piece in his artistic puzzle. You can tell me it's a joke, or you can tell me I shouldn't be taking it so seriously, but again, why aren't I laughing? And also, people, I don't feel like this was necessarily meant to be a gag, not entirely. Fat Mike has been pretty open about his struggles with sobriety. Hell, that's basically what most of the last NoFX record was about. But where that album had energy, life, and creative performances and well thought out lyrics, this project has none of that. What it has is creepy carnival music and a Fat Mike who sounds like he's purposefully holding his nose while he's singing, "I am trying, I am trying." And the overall tone of this record is just like too depressing. Look, I get it, sobriety is no picnic, but this stuff doesn't come off as like reflective or remorseful. It comes off like, "I want a Percocet." Like, oh, maybe this album and its concept would have been easier to stomach if the music were at least alright, but again, it sounds like circus music being piped into a dirty methadone clinic, so I reiterate, who the hell was this for? You know, like with Scott Stapp, I feel like I shouldn't be putting this album on the list. Again, it's from an artist that no one was expecting to do well. And also like Stapp, it's from a guy who admittedly has done a lot in recent years to clean himself up and stay out of trouble. You know what, more power to both of them to keeping their shit together for a change, but good God, just as an album, this thing was foul. Just an absolute dead raccoon of a record. Almost everything about it is terrible. The music is terrible. It's all the same baby's first power chord progressions and overly simplistic butt rock. And I do mean butt rock, people. The production is absolute ass. Like, the album sounds like it's coming out of a butt. The lyrics are also terrible. And you know what? I feel like they shouldn't be this bad. Like, this was an area Scantlin could have really turned things around on us for a change. This was the area where we really could have seen him improve. The dude's been through a fucking nightmare of a ride over the past few years. And with his own struggles to stay sober, he's obviously had to make a lot of changes in his life that could have inspired some very thoughtful and meaningful reflections to potentially craft songs out of. Like, he could have done it. Did he do that? Nah, it's the same bumpkin-ass, herpy-derpy bullshit he's been writing since 2000. Like, not an inch of progression. Which is really sad considering Scantlin has been at this for over 20, closer to 30 years now when you think about it. Hey, Franzak, see this? This is your future! I don't take any pleasure in dunking on a man who's genuinely working to get his act together. I mean, I've had to do that for 3 people on my list so far. How big of an asshole does that make me? I know, but look, I've got to review the music in front of me, and what's in front of me? It is a turd on the floor. And the dog who left that turd may have, like, stopped biting strangers and is working really hard to be a truly good boy, but he still shit on the carpet, so he goes in the corner. Bad dog. How in the hell does AJR keep avoiding that #1 spot? Seriously, with a band this garbage, it's flabbergasting to think that somehow they haven't won my top shit prize, but again, here we are. AJR release an album and it comes in second from the bottom. But people, let me assure you, the album that did end up beating AJR was reprehensible, because this thing, How in the hell does this band keep seeing success? This thing, this fucking reprehensible thing with its overproduced, overly sanded down, miserably bland and lifeless mix, its lyrics so mouth-breathingly stupid and inane you'd swear the songs were written by 10-year-olds if the vocals weren't coming out of grown-ass men, and the absolutely shrieking cynicism of fake positivity that splashes across your face as you listen to it like water balloons filled with piss and stale cum. This thing made it to #1 on the US top rock charts. You know, I don't like to be that guy that dooms and glooms about like how rock is dead and blah blah blah. You guys know I don't like to be that guy because it's not dead. It still exists, and there are places where it thrives. And something as trivial as bad rock music existing, even a lot of bad rock music existing, is not strong enough to kill an entire genre. I mean, there's a lot of shitty pop out there, but pop is still, you know, top dog. A lot of shitty rap. Rap is still one of the biggest genres in the world. People, that's not enough to kill a genre. But when we keep rewarding success and relevance to refuse like this, you know, I at least get why people keep saying rock is dead. Honestly, this album is just anti-intellectualism incarnate. People were so worried about genres like hair metal and grunge and even nu metal being dumb and making people dumb by listening to it and, you know, bringing other music down. But for as dumb, as shriekingly dumb as all those genres could be, they were never this. This record is idiocy embraced. It's not only drinking the tub of paste, it's telling everyone how good the paste actually is, and how if you don't drink the paste, you're the real problem with the world and you need to drink the paste. Drink the paste or you're a bad person. I'm a good person because I drink the paste, drink the paste. That'll be our next hit song, drink the paste, dun-dee-dun-dee-dun. This was only one of 2 albums I listened to this year that actively just pissed me off having to sit through them. Even though 2019 was a good year in general, seriously people, stay tuned for that best list. I have so much more to talk about in that vid. But this album, this was a grim reminder that there is still a lot of very ugly shit happening in the music world. Honestly, in any other year, this probably would have made the top spot. But, well, there was one other record this year. One other record. Oh, my dear Lord. There was one other record, and people, sit down, because we need to talk.
Mask Off. The album I'm about to discuss is bad on an entirely different level. I apologize if it sounds like I'm coming off a bit overly dramatic for this, but I need you people to fully comprehend me when I say that this record I'm about to talk about is the worst thing I've ever listened to for this channel. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not doing this as a skit or a bit or anything. I'm trying to come at you people as real as I can come. Because this album deserves the harshest truth I can deliver. I didn't review this album on the channel proper this year, but I'm doing it now, if only because I have to purge my conscience of this awful, artless thing. This album is receiving my first, and to date only, 0. I don't give a rating like that lightly. A record basically has to be so bankrupt of creative passion, so negligent in its message, and so hate-fuckingly devoid of empathy that it's practically the antithesis of music. Like, that's what it takes to get a 0 out of me. But people, please, make no mistake when I say that the record in question wholeheartedly deserves it. Because, God damn it, Doug, you fucked up big time. It's one thing to make a bad album, it's another thing to make a bad comedy album, but this This isn't just an album that completely misses the point of what Pink Floyd's original record was supposed to be. It's an album that knows it's missing the point and is celebrating its own joyous ignorance. For as horrid as AJ is about wallowing in their own gleeful stupidity, you put out a record that topped even that shameful display. And The Wall genuinely does have its issues, believe me. It's not a perfect record by any means, and there is a right way to critique its flaws, and I know you know how to critique those flaws. But that's not what you did, Doug, is it? Instead, you hired someone to steal the music of Pink Floyd, badly I might add, and used it as a platform to spew hate. Not just your own shallow hatred of this album for being up its own ass, which, yeah, Doug, you really are living in glass houses when it comes to that little anecdote, but your own personal hatred as well. Most of this record is devoted only to your own petty squabbles. Your squabbles with the record itself for not being specifically about you and not relating directly to you and how that's somehow supposed to be the album's fault. Your squabble with the internet and how it dared to suggest you might not be a great person after getting caught doing some really shady shit over the last few years. And regardless of any of that, seriously, Doug, you spend half your album bitching about this. What the fuck did any of that have to do with The Wall? You didn't criticize this album. All you did was show us your hatred. The Wall does have problems, but none of those problems were more important than your problems, were they, Doug? You wrote a pathetic, miserable little screed on why the world is so very mean to you and you alone, and dared to call that criticism. What you did to this record isn't criticism, and you know that. I know damn well that you know what you were doing with this video. You're not dumb, Walker. I don't think you hate this album out of ignorance. Based on what I heard on this record and saw in that miserable review, I just can't help but think you hate this album so much because it hits so close to home, doesn't it? You've been building your own wall for years now, with every friend or colleague you alienate, with every dwindling view count, with every negative thing said about you in public and private, all of that feedback. You're taking it, and you're building your own little wall with it. A strong, tall, and beautiful wall that will protect you from all those bad people who are against you. All of that slander, all of that criticism that's fired back at you, they're all just bricks in your wall. Everyone who downvoted that abysmal video, all those critics who rightly laughed at your naked effrontery, even me, and every word falling out of my mouth right now, all in all of it, are just bricks in your wall. And I think you hate this film because it serves as a grim reflection of the things you're doing to yourself every day, but refuse to accept. Well, Walker, I can tell you something, even though I know you're not gonna listen. You are walking down a very dark path. This wall you're building, it will swallow you whole. You'll have to keep putting more and more people behind it as you refuse to bend, to compromise, to listen. As you build your wall higher and higher, it will swallow you further and further until one by one, everyone in your life, the internet, YouTube, your sponsors, your business partners, your remaining friends, even your family, eventually, everyone becomes a brick in that wall. And if you keep building at this rate, you will find yourself all alone. with no one left in your life to save you from your own foolishness, except you and that wall. And when you build walls so thick and so strong with so many layers of hatred and resentment, not even the worms will be able to tear that down. My God, Walker, this thing that you've become, I would have called you an inspiration back in the day, maybe even someone worth looking up to, dare I say it, in my ignorance. But after seeing this slow, humiliating degeneration over the last few years, no. You aren't any of those things anymore. What you are, for me and for everyone else out there, is a lesson. A lesson in what you can become when you let your ego overtake you. When you take your personal vision of what the world is so hard and inflexibly to interpret art, criticism, and even the people who take part in them as villains in your story, attempting to cut you down. When I started doing this 7 years ago, I would have loved to have been associated with you. Now I'm thankful every day that I never was. And God willing, I never will be. I don't want to become what you've become, Doug. I don't want to wake up 5, 10, 20 years from now and see a trail of ruin in my wake. I don't want to wake up one morning and realize I've become the very thing I used to rally against. I do not want to be stuck in your shadow or anyone else's. Not anymore, I don't. So it's time for a change.